Okay, so before I go into the oil wash process that I use on my models, I just want to share with you the step that goes before that, and that is to varnish the model up to protect the paint underneath from the mix of oil paint and painting spirits, effectively, which are really corrosive to paint. So you need to protect them with a layer of varnish first. So what I do is bring my model out and give it a spray with Vallejo satin varnish. My airbrush is an Evolution Harder and Steenbeck airbrush. I've had it for 3 or 4 years now, I think. Probably cost about £100 for the airbrush itself. And I think where you spend the real money on airbrushing is on the airbrush compressor, and I forget which make mine is now, but I got the lot from Everything Airbrush as a package before I really knew what I was doing. But I did listen to the advice that you need to spend a lot more on your compressor than you do on the airbrush itself. So I think that probably came in about £180, nearly double what I paid for the airbrush itself. And they've worked brilliantly ever since. So it must have been good advice. I can thoroughly recommend them. So there we go. So this guy has been varnished now. I don't know if you can tell in the picture, but the edges of the decals completely vanish once you get a layer of varnish over the top, which makes them just look fantastic. So there we go. Just continuing on from the last video, where I showed you what I was doing with the transfers on the Leviathan and also the varnish wash. Varnish spray I gave the Leviathan. That varnish spray will now protect the paint below from the oil wash now, which is quite a harsh solution. So that's all done. What I'll show you now is what I'm going to need to do the next stage. So you need some oil paint. I use Rowney Artists oil colours, and this is 223 Burnt Umber, which is really popular with modelers. It gives you a sort of really dirty, oily kind of wash, which works well on sort of 30k, 40k kind of stuff, or tanks. You need to mix that with some thinners. I use AK Interactive Odorless Thinner. I used to have just normal thinner, and it smells awful. So it's great to find that there is this odorless version available. A pipette, so you can get some of that stuff out of the bottle, and a painting tray to put it all in. So we'll start off and we'll just mix up a little bit of the oil wash. Okay, let's grab a bit of this off. Now there's probably a resource that would tell me what the right mixture is and what kind of ratio of thinners to oil there is, but I've never found one, so I just kind of do it by eye. Here we go. So the reason I like the oil wash, as opposed to going for an ink wash using a bit of Nuln Oil or Agrax Earthshade, is that with an oil wash you can make sure that the wash sits only in the sort of crevices, cracks, panelling edges, and around the sort of rivets, whereas with an ink wash it does tend to end up sort of all over the entire panel, and filtering the paint underneath through the shade of that wash. So I like oil washes because it gives you a bit more control over that and doesn't affect the nice kind of colours you've got underneath. Now this brush is a bit messy. Just tidy that up. What I'm looking for to help me decide I've got the right kind of mix, I've got enough thinners in there, is that when I sort of touch it on the edge of one of these creases in the foil, you can kind of see it will sit nicely in there without too much effort. It might even just sort of spread along the line on its own. I think a drop more thinner on there. Okay, let's try this. Yeah, that's nice. That's going to run nicely. Okay. Okay, so let's give this a try out on the model, see if I got the mix right. Now, what you should see when you're using this on a model, you should, if you've got the mix right, it should you should just dab it into the crack. And you should, there you go, you see it suck along the line, along there. That's the sort of capillary action working, and it just pulls it beautifully along the line. And then for the rivets, just to make sure you've got a nice amount of the oil paint on your brush. It's not too thin a mix. Give it a bit of a dab on like that. These side ones. And then you can see I've already done most of this side of the model. Just a little bit of infill to do here and there. I think the old school sort of military modelling name for doing these rivets is a pin wash. I think that's what it is. I think pin washing is just another name for an oil wash. Now, some of those rivets I got way more on than I'd like to have done. That's going to take quite a bit of clean up afterwards. So I have to make sure I don't leave this to dry for too long. So now I need to get quite a bit of that off. You can see even when it's not an indentation for two panels, it's merely where sort of two pieces are meeting like this. If you just tap it on the right place, it gets pulled all the way around by the capillary action. You know, if you've got a reasonably steady hand, this is pretty easy to do. He says, shaking about all over the place. Okay. A few more studs there to catch. So I think ink washes are great. If I've done, well, on this model, I've used ink washes. I've used normal oil on the Boltgun Metal, or whatever it's called now, Leadbelcher, which is an absolutely classic use of an ink wash. Nothing looks better really than normal oil on Leadbelcher. It's brilliant. So I've not completely run away from ink washes. I still use them a lot. Painting faces, I use the flesh tones and the flesh ink washes. I think I still use my old tub of Ogre Flesh, which is still lasting me. Doesn't show any sign of running out anytime soon. So by no means giving up on ink washes. They've totally got their place in my painting, but for the most part, certainly on things like panel edging, you can't beat an oil wash. just so targeted and neat, and you don't end up, none of this is going over the rest of the panel, so you don't lose any of the cool colours or graduations you've achieved already. So I'll just do a couple more of these, and then I'll switch the camera off, and I'll come back for the sort of final stage of this. This is the final stage, and what you do now is you tidy up the oil wash and the pin wash that you did earlier. I should say, I meant to mention this before, but there's obviously loads and loads of great tutorials on YouTube showing you how to do this. So if you come across this and want to learn a bit more about it, then there's loads of viewing to take a look at, and there's other people who've gone into more detail or used different materials. So this is just the way I do it. One person I'd really recommend taking a look at is Orc Painter Nerd. I learnt loads off of watching that guy when I first did it. In particular, his Death Guard Predator, which is just stunning, and I used a lot of the techniques that he shared in that to paint my Shadow Sword tank, which I then entered into a Golden Demon at Warhammer World, and I got a finalist position for it. And I should say that I was one of very few entries in that category, and I don't think I would have got anywhere near the finalist selection on another day. But I did, so that was great. It's a bit of a hobby ambition ticked off. And it also, probably about 4 or 5 months after that, I kind of decided to sell the Shadow Sword because I don't really play with it very often, and somehow it just didn't seem to work its way into my list, even when I was playing a big game. Like, for example, I was playing a big game this Saturday against the other dads. We're doing like about 3,250 a piece, times 4, and it's not going to make it into that list either. So it really isn't getting many outings. So I kind of feel like it needed to go. So I was going to put it on eBay. In fact, I'd taken the photos and written the post, and then White Dwarf, as it was then, landed, and there it was in White Dwarf. So I couldn't sell it then. So it's staying in the back of my cupboard still, gathering dust, hoping one day it'll get to go out and blow up a Titan or something. Anyway, I've gone off on a tangent there. So hopefully you've been able to watch what I'm doing here. So I'm looking. So when I went into each of these panel lines here and touched the brush in to load the oil wash into it, it also leaves a little bit of a mark where I've been clumsy and slightly missed the groove. Here's one. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but there's one. So I'm really you just kind of rub over them and it vanishes. It's amazing. And the other thing I'm doing is where you've got a rivet and it's got quite a lot of oil wash around it, like this one, and it's not really the look I'm going for. It's too it's not subtle enough. So you just go around it with a bit of this stuff and dissipate some of that pigment, some of the oil paint, and just thin it out a bit. What I don't want is a sharp line between the brown oil paint and the yellow colour of the armour anywhere. It doesn't look realistic enough. I want it to sort of slowly dissipate, the brown to slowly turn to yellow. So that's what I'm going for on all this. And by just going back in with the thinners, which is what I've put in this little pool here, and it's just the AK Interactive Odorless thinners again. That's how I'm getting that effect. Okay, and that's about it really. It's not as hard as you might think.